Hey friends, welcome to the Adventures of Blink Season 5. I am, of course, Blink, and I am so glad that you've joined me today. Make sure you like, subscribe, and click that notification bell so that we'll stay connected, and you can also drop by the blog for more content as well. In past seasons, we've done some DevOps work, we learned about Git, and most recently we explored the concept of developer experience. But for Season 5, I wanted to just have some fun building. Well, as it turns out, I love old games. Okay, older than that. No, older than that one too. Even older. I grew up in the mid 80s doing my gaming on a Macintosh Plus. Games back then didn't have the technical ability to push so many pixels, so they had to prioritize replay over spectacle. And I thought it would be fun for us to build one of those old games this season. So we're going to do Breakout. It's a pretty simple game to understand. There's a paddle at the bottom of the screen, and a ball, and a bunch of bricks. And your job is to keep the ball from falling off the bottom of the screen and knock out all the bricks. This season, we're going to build a Breakout clone. Let's talk about our goals. First, we'll have a paddle controlled by the mouse. We'll have a ball, maybe multiple, hard to say. We'll have bricks, we'll have levels, we'll have the ability to win or lose. Now, just as important as what we'll build is what we aren't building. It's critical to accurately define our scope. Season 5 will not have power-ups, fancy particle systems, scoring, or different brick types. We'll leave place for those to be added later. All right, enough talk. Today we're going to plan out our repository. Let's get started by heading over to GitHub and opening a new repository. All right, so we're going to head over here to GitHub and we're going to create a new repository. We will call this Season 5 Breakout and the Adventures of Blink Season 5 Breakout clone. All right, now the way this repo is going to work, I'm going to have the main branch be where all of the cumulative work is. So by the end of the season, we'll have a working version in main. But what I want to do is build out each episode in a separate branch so that as you follow along in the episodes, you can change branches to see what's been updated along the way. Or you can code it yourself and then have a basis for comparison after the fact. Either way you want to handle it. Whatever you want to do with it, I would be delighted if you would fork this and code alongside me, and let's see if we can build something cool together. So this will be, of course, public. I will add a README because you should always have a good README. We learned about that last season. I will add a gitignore file, and because I'm working in Python, I'm going to pre-build it using the GitHub capabilities. I would rather let them find all the things. They'll be more likely to get all the stuff than I will. As far as licensing goes, I'm picking the unlicensed because I really don't care what happens to this code after I write it. The whole purpose of this is just to have the experience and to be part of the journey. It's not something that I plan to publish someplace. Maybe that's something we should talk about in the future. There are places where you can publish your code after it's written. That maybe by the end of this season or digging into next, we could look at how to do a little bit of indie publishing. At any rate, I'm going to go on ahead and click Create Repository and let GitHub think for a moment. And there we are. We have our repository ready to go. So I'm going to grab my URL, and then we're going over to VS Code. Now, I have everything living in my Documents folder within my Mac here. So what I'm going to do is git clone into Documents. And then I'm just going to paste that in. And then we'll do that. So now I'm in the right place to begin doing our build. Okay, so we've cloned our repository. I'm going to go on ahead and make this larger so that it's easier to follow along on YouTube for it. And then I'm going to open up the Explorer here on the side, where we're going to start building out our application structure. I think this is a really important step to do up front. I find that if I don't do it, what I end up with is just a pile of files, and it's disorganized and it's hard to maintain and it's a mess. So I've gotten in the personal habit of anytime I start a new project, I really want to start with an overall directory structure. I want to have folders in certain places so that I understand what the structure of the application is going to be. And I've built some of that in my head already that I want to share with you. So I'll kind of go through this fast. If you were doing this absolutely from scratch, you would probably take a little bit more time to be thoughtful about how you were going to lay things out. But I've sort of done some movie magic here, right, to get beyond that and let's actually start building things. So the first thing I'm going to add in here is a source directory. We definitely need a place to keep our source code. That's how it's going to work. Next to it, I want to have a tests directory, because if I write any unit tests along the way, maybe not if you saw previous seasons, when you write your unit tests, you want to have them in a central location where you can easily grab them and use them and maintain them. Let's see. Additionally, we want to have an assets folder at this main level. Now, assets is where you put all of the extra things that aren't code that are required to make your app work. So if you're going to do any sort of artwork, for instance, you're going to have like a custom font on the main menu, or you're going to have maybe the ball isn't just going to be a circle that you draw on the screen like we're going to do in this season, but you could even add in the concept of having like an image of a marble or something, then that becomes the ball that you use in the game. Any of that artwork is going to get loaded into the assets. Same with things like sound files. If you want to have sound effects when it beeps off the different bricks or whatever, then you would put those things in here and make them in a central reference point. It's really important to keep everything centralized and organized, because otherwise, especially with Python, you're going to have to remember to open up those folders and make them available to the Python program. They're not part of the source tree. They're off to the side, and so you have to tell Python where to go find that stuff separately. It's easier if you organize yourself ahead of time. So inside of here, we would have things like fonts, or maybe sounds, or another one that we'll actually get to. The sounds I probably won't even use in this season, but one that's really important is levels. We'll want to have a place to store the level configuration files so that each level can be stored in one place and then pulled in as needed. So those are things that we would want to have in assets. Let's see. I would be remiss if I didn't go on ahead and open a docs folder. You should definitely have docs available to you. Let's see. At the root directory, we're going to have a requirements.txt, because that's how we pull in dependencies. Now, the thing about dependencies in this application, I'm going to try my best to be minimalist. So I'll probably have to use Pygame, like that's kind of a requirement in order to build a game in Python. I think there's a couple other frameworks you can use, but Pygame's sort of the most popular for beginning the process. So that's where I'm going to start the work. That's about the only thing I expect to have in here. I really don't want to get caught in a bunch of dependency management. So I'm going to try my best to stay away from pulling in extra packages that aren't just part of core Python. Let's see. The last thing that I would put out here in the root before we start, actually constructing the way the application is going to work, I want to have an app config JSON file. Now, this is important to me because I could very easily just use constants in all the Python files, and that would be fine. It would work. But then I have to make a code change every time I want to update a setting in the game. And I want to get out of that mindset early, because if this were to be a finished, polished game, that means I'm going to compile it afterward. I'm going to create an executable. I don't want to have to rerun the entire compile process every time I make an edit. So if I can pull in the app config from a file that's external to the executable itself, I now have the ability to change some settings and things about the way the game operates without actually recompiling the game. So we're going to go on ahead and build that up front and get in the habit of using it. It's also good to keep your constants as central as possible. So if I can build a JSON structure that holds them all, I can still have like a library of hierarchies and where they're available and what they're valid for. But it gives me one place to go find all of those things. And having a toolbox of constants is really important later on, as you'll see as we get through the season. Let's see. So the next thing I'm going to have to do inside of the source folder, I'm actually going to create some other folders just to keep track of things. I'm going to have a core section, and core is going to be for game logic. So not necessarily things that interact with the screen, but things that describe how paddles and balls and bricks work. We're going to need to have that, in a place where we can get at it easily. We'll also have a folder in here for screens. So the idea of a screen, it seems pretty simple, like that's the screen that you're playing in. But if you think about it, the main menu is going to show up on a screen. And we're going to need to track that separately because it's going to be built very differently from the actual brick, paddle, and ball screen where you play the game. So we want to have the ability to have multiple screens out there that we can sort of switch between in the game logic. Let's see. Now at this point, I'm going to fast forward because if I upload this to GitHub as it is, it's only going to add the two files there, the app config JSON and the requirements.txt. And that's because empty folders don't actually show up as a change in Git. So what I'm going to do is go on ahead and put some things in those so that episode 1 will have some data, but I'm not going to make you watch me do all that because it's just sort of boilerplate kind of things. The one thing that I will talk about is that any source folders, like any folder where Python is going to need to know that it's within the application package, we're going to need to add a __init__.py. That file has to be in everything that gets registered as a Python module, and that allows the Python interpreter to know where those files live. It can start to build a hierarchy. It looks for that file as a way to tell it. So I'm going to build one of those I put it in the source there, but I'm also going to have to put one separately in the core and screens folders just to make sure that they're registered. Now the cool part about that is that we'll also make that show up in the season 1 branch or the episode 1 branch so that you can see the core folder structure that we're building. But we'll skip over that. Here comes some movie magic. All right, so as I was building that out, I realized there was one more file that I needed to go on ahead and build that's kind of important to talk about, and that's main.py. So in the source folder, we're going to add at the root main.py. Not actually going to make any edits to it today. I'm just going to make sure it exists. All right, so now that I've built all the things, I am ready to go on ahead and push this up to our repository. So the first thing I'm going to do is git checkout -b, and I'm just going to do episode 1. And then I'm going to do git add dot for add everything, and you'll see all the U's became A's. I did add a little bit of stuff to the README, so we have one modified file there. And now we're going to do git commit -am to grab all of the stage changes and add this message which says episode 1 branch. Okay, and it's pulled in all the files. You can go through the list there and verify that everything has come along for the ride that we expect. About the only thing that won't is I don't have anything in the sounds folder, so that's there, but it's only on my box. If you really want sounds, you can put them in there, but I'm not adding them this season as far as I know. I don't know, and maybe things get really good toward the end. We'll see. Anyway, I'm now ready to push. And I'm going to push that to origin. And I named this branch episode 1, right? Yes. Okay. Episode 1. And there we go. So now if I go back over to my GitHub, I can see that episode 1 had pushes 2 seconds ago. Hooray. And we can go look. Oh, I have to refresh the screen first. So if I do that, I now have everything in episode 1. Now, as promised, I'm going to keep main up to date. So let's go back here and go check out main. And I'm going to do git merge episode 1. And then I'm going to do git push origin main. And now we should see that main has updated as well. All right, friends, we're going to wrap up this episode here. Next week, our plan is to build out the main game loop. It's the core of a Pygame app, and if you've never built a game like this before, it can be a little confusing at first. Remember to like, subscribe, click the notification bell, and make sure you stop by the blog. I'd love to hear from you. We'll see you next time.